I want to welcome everybody today. I'm Donna McConico. I'm the CEO here at Signal Centers. We have staff here. If you're a staff member, raise your hand. We have guests here, people who come regularly. Thank you. And we have some of our participants here. If you're a part of the Adult Center program, would you raise your hand if you come here for Adult Day services? Excellent. Thank you so much for being here. This is a very special day, and the people who made it very possible for us is Play Core and Play and Park Services. Lindsay Hill is the vice president. She has worked with us on building our playground. I believe you were out there the day we've installed all the plants too, aren't you, helping us with all that? And so I'm going to turn it over to her to introduce our special guest.
Thank you so much to everyone from Signal Centers and Donna for having us to visit today and having a little time out on the playground to allow our guest, Dr. Temple Grandin, to try out some of the equipment. So as she said, I'm Lindsay Hill with Play and Park Structures, which is a brand of Playcore based here in Chattanooga. All of the equipment on the playground is made just an hour from here at our factory in Fort Payne, Alabama, which we'll be going to today to give Dr. Grandin a tour and show her a prototype that we've been working on that is inspired by a piece of equipment that one of her teachers made from her when she was a child that she really enjoyed. So just a little bit about Dr. Temple Grandin. She's a designer of livestock handling facilities and a professor of animal science at Colorado State University. Facilities she has designed are located in more than 6 countries. In North America, almost half of the cattle are handled in a system that she designed. She has a BA, a master's, and a PhD in animal science. Dr. Grandin has written and published 11 or more books on a combination of subjects, including animal science, animal handling, and autism. 3 of those books were New York Times bestsellers, and I would assume there will be more down the road. Her newest book that was just released is called Navigating Autism. In 2010, Dr. Grandin was number 31 out of the 100 most influential people named by Time magazine. Her life story has been made into an HBO movie titled Temple Grandin, starring Claire Danes, which won 7 Emmy Awards and a Golden Globe. I believe that those of you at Signal Centers had a movie night and all watched it together recently. So Dr. Grandin's going to make a few comments today about different kinds of minds and the autistic brain. Please welcome Dr. Temple Grandin.
Okay, I can take this off. Good. I want to get to where I don't make them get too close to the speaker. I'm a professor of animal science at Colorado State University. I've been there for over 30 years. And when I was a little kid, I had all the symptoms of severe autism, no speech. I can't emphasize enough the importance of good teachers. I had a wonderful speech teacher. My mother didn't baby me. She had a very good sense of how to stretch me, not push me into a situation I couldn't handle, but stretch me just slightly outside the comfort zone, always giving me choices. Great 3rd grade elementary school teacher, a wonderful science teacher who took a board student and got me interested in studying. I just can't emphasize enough the importance of some of these mentors. But one of the big problems I'm seeing is kids getting kind of babied, not learning enough skills. I'm seeing teenagers, fully verbal, doing well in school, all kinds of emphasis on academics, aren't doing basic things like learning shopping, laundry, just really, really basic things. And I'll tell you about one. My mind thinks in specific examples. Well, I met a mom and her 12-year-old daughter at one of the airports somewhere. And we were sitting in the gate room waiting for our flights. And I found out that the girl had never gone shopping. So I pulled $5 out of my wallet and I said, go to that newsstand across the hall and buy something. And she went over there and she bought a drink and brought me back the change. First time she'd ever shopped. Now, I see it. I'm a visual thinker. It was a store across the hall. We could see it. I didn't send her to the other end of a shopping mall. You see little kind of baby steps, but I'm finding a lot of moms have difficulty letting go. Now, in the Navigating Autism book, one of the big themes is don't get label locked. This is one of Deborah Moore's terms, like Deborah Moore did a lot of work on this book, and she came up with this term label locking, where parents and teachers get so hung up on the label, they don't see that this kid actually could do anything. And the problem you got with autism is at one end of the spectrum, you got Elon Musk. He came out on Saturday Night Live. I always thought he was autistic, and I read Ashley Vance's book. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have someone who's very severe, can't talk, may have very severe uncontrollable epilepsy on top of the autism. And so you've got this huge, gigantic spectrum. But when I was out working in construction, I'm going to estimate that about 20% of some of the machinery designers, people with 20 patents, people that own steel fabrication shops, were either autistic, dyslexic, or ADHD. And they're going nowhere now. They're ending up in the basement playing video games. And if any of you are involved with any of the boards of education, I'll tell you the worst thing the schools ever did, taking out all the hands-on classes, music, shop, cooking, sewing, woodworking, welding, fixing automobiles, because all of these things can become careers. And I worked with a lot of brilliant people that were really different. Another thing I like to talk about is the different kinds of thinking. In my book, The Autistic Brain, I'm an extreme visual thinker. Everything I think about is a picture. So if you watch that HBO movie, that shows how I think in pictures. Then you've got the guys out in Silicon Valley that are also probably autistic that think in math, patterns. They are a math thinker. And then you got the word thinkers, the verbal thinkers. And I was shocked to find out in my late 30s that not everybody thought in pictures the way I did. And these different kinds of thinking can often have complementary skills. But verbal thinkers, we have a lot of them in education, overgeneralize. My mind works the opposite way. Specific examples, and on things like the shopping stuff. I got another lady down in Argentina to buy something for the first time too. You see, they are specific. And then you form categories. It's what's called bottom-up thinking, where verbal is very, very top-down. Only problem is they don't know how to implement. How do you actually implement things? And I've done a lot of talks also with businesses. And if you understand sort of how the different minds go together, they have complementary skills. Let's say you're building a big poultry processing plant. My kind of mind makes all the clever equipment. The mathematical mind does the boilers and refrigeration. I've seen that every single food company I've worked with, they're all the same. You see, and you need to have all those different kinds of skills. And you're in a very big manufacturing area here. I hope your schools are keeping the hands-on classes in, because you got carpet factories here and other factories that need maintenance, they need equipment built. And in some parts of the country, you're not getting that, because the kids that ought to be inventing things for the factories are playing video games in the basement. And the whole world of industry is a world that kind of a lot of verbal thinkers don't understand. Now let's just look at things that are distracting. This door constantly moving. I have problems with attention shifting, and my attention shifting is very, very slow. So every time that door is moving, that distracts me. All right, let's look at jobs that don't work. Tons of multitasking. Busy McDonald's takeout window. That's where you don't put them. Also, I cannot remember long strings of verbal information. Any job that requires a sequence, I need a pilot's checklist. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Verbal sequence, I've got no working memory. But if I was a computer, I have a real small processor, but a gigantic, huge memory. And there's certain things that autistic people do really well. I mean, I think Elon Musk has a very successful career. And I put an emphasis on career because that's what's given me life worth meaning. And the thing is, there's all different levels of ability. But it's doing what can the person do. I like what Stephen Hawking had to say about disability, the famous physicist. Concentrate on those things that disability doesn't prevent you from doing well. He was quoted with the New York Times shortly before he died. He could do math in his head really well and not much else. And I'm worried also with the visual thinkers like me, and you need us out there to keep these carpet factories running, is that we can't do algebra. So today, I probably could not graduate from high school. And a lot of smart people get into a lot of jobs through the back doors. We got to find back doors into jobs. I'll give you another specific example. There's an autistic person right now who receives the samples at a food safety lab. A really responsible job, getting, test different foods for E. coli and salmonella, and he's got to make sure he doesn't mix them up and he doesn't cross-contaminate. And how was that job gotten? Somebody knew somebody who knew somebody. That's the way that job was gotten. We need to utilize more of these back doors. The front door is not the only way to go. And you got to short circuit all this internet nonsense that you do now, using the personal contacts to get people into jobs. Because that's the thing that bothers me is in industry, we are losing skills. You want a poultry processing plant right now? How about 100 shipping containers from Holland? It's not $25,000 for a truckload. $25,000 for a 40-foot box. Just ridiculous. Yeah, you don't want to lose skills. You keep those classes in the schools. People ask me all the time, what's the single most important thing you could do for education? Don't take out the shop classes and the theater. Okay, that's something that become a career. Music. How can a kid find out they're good with musical instruments if they're not exposed to them? There are some states where all you can learn in school is English, math, and sports, and not much else. I'm also really appalled at the horrible writing skills of college students. It's gotten really bad in the last 5 or 6 years old. The last 5 or 6 years. Really, really bad. All right, let's just open it up for some questions.
Yes, we do. And folks, if you do have a question, just raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone to you. Please don't ask your question until we get a microphone to you so the people on our live stream can hear your question. So if anybody has a question, raise your hand. I can get a microphone to you.
Dr. Grandin, one thing that I must say is that's sort of how I got my job here at Signal Center. I basically got placed in the job placement.
I can't hear what you're saying.
So,
There's too much echo and too much. You see, I have one of my problems I still have. I cannot hear when there's background noise.
can you hear me better now?
Okay, yes.
Basically, I thank you for saying that about the back doors and all, because basically that's how I found my job here at Signal Centers, because I basically had to go through the job placement program we have. I was scared that I would never find a job till the job placement program placed me here, and my job is excellent for me and my skill set.
Well, that's really good.
And-
Good, great. Now,
I
I think that's wonderful.
It just is, I think that the autistic mind needs to be used more, because unfortunately, if it wasn't for that job placement program, I don't think I would have ever found a job.
Yeah.
And
No, we have to be finding a lot more of these back doors. That's something we need to be doing. And the other thing is, my mind works in specific examples. Where, okay, that's now a specific example of a successful job placement. Okay, then I start taking successful job placements and putting them into categories, like on a spreadsheet. Here's things that worked. Here's things that did not work. And what common features did the things that work have?
How long did it take for you to begin speaking, since you said that you were
I
nonverbal?
got speech by age 4.
And
When I got into really good early therapy at 2.5, 2 teachers working in the basement of their house, a lot of emphasis on turn-taking games, how to learn and wait and take turns. That's really important.
okay, so how
Tremendous amount of
years?
emphasis on that. Also, I noticed on that Twizzler that the kids, when they're that small, they have to cooperate to make that thing work. That's actually a really good skill. Well, the kids are too small to make that work by themselves.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm Erskine Oglesby. Prior, prior to this event, we were speaking about parenting a child with autism. Could you share with us some thoughts about that?
Well, we already talked some about the overprotection. Mother had a very good sense of stretching, and I like to call it stretching. You don't force the kid into some sensory overload, because sensory issues are real, where it would be just too overwhelming. But stretching just outside the comfort zone. Also, on some of the stuff with noise, is sometimes the child can tolerate a noise like a hairdryer if the kid can turn it on and off themselves. Let the kid control the horrible noise thing, whatever it is. But there's always going to be problems with working memory and with attention shifting slowness every time that door moved. See, that distracts me. And for most people, it'd be a fraction of a second. For me, it's like a full second or two. Real slow attention shift. So multitasking, you want to avoid those kind of jobs. You see at the food safety lab, the person gets one package at a time. They usually come in like FedEx or UPS, something like that. And then all the samples for one big factory would be in that box. So you're working on one at a time. It's not multitasking. Where a McDonald's takeout window, that'd be the worst possible job. Or a chaotic store at Christmas time, be another bad choice. In fact, that's one that actually failed. An 18-year-old, fully verbal girl. Chaotic clothing store at Christmas time. No, that's not the time to start it.
I've heard you talk through conference and also through videos, YouTube videos, and you talked about children with autism that have sensory overload and they do the spinning and other stimming. Could you talk about that for educators and how to use why they're doing that and how to work with children that are doing that?
Well, sometimes they want to do some repetitive stimming to calm down. And there's some kids you almost have to give them some stimming breaks. But then there's other times that you don't do it. We would the dining room table. Also in the 50s, they used a method called teachable moments for all kids. Grown-ups corrected little kids, no matter where you were. Like if I was in the store and I touched too much stuff, they didn't scream no. They'd say, only touch the things you're going to buy. They'd give the instruction. Or if I licked the mashed potatoes, with my finger or something like that, mother would say, use the fork. She'd give the instruction. I call that teachable moments. And I've seen a lot of grandparents come up to me, and they find out they're autistic when the kids get diagnosed. Now, the other thing is, let's look into Elon Musk's history. If you read Ashley Vance's book, he learned working skills really young. He wasn't playing video games. He was making them and selling them. You see, that's learning working skills. And that's the other thing where we're really failing. It starts out with chores for little kids, church volunteer jobs at age 10, where they've got to learn how to do a task outside the home, on a schedule. Mom and dad are not the boss. Really, really important. And it can be something, to set up food. It can be passing out programs. Another thing that was done in my neighborhood with all children, and was really helpful for me, was when the parents had parties. Dress up in good clothes, greet the guests, learn how to say please and thank you. Taught important social skills. These are not hard things to do. But this is where we're really falling down. I'm seeing too many smart kids going nowhere because they're getting too babied. But on the other hand, you don't shove them into some multitasking sensory overload mess. You don't do that. Another basic principle, no surprises. Surprises scare. Don't do surprises. Okay, if you're going on a trip to Disneyland or something like that, make sure you've looked at all the websites and you get them interested in it, but not a surprise. Okay, right there.
Good morning. I have a quick question for you. What about structure? how important is structure in the life of a child that's autistic?
Well, I think it's important to have structure, like, our meals would be pretty much at the same time.
Right.
And Carol Gray, who does social stories, would say, well, breakfast is usually at 7:30. There might be some reason for it sometime not to be there at that time. You want to have structure, but not have it so rigid that if there's some variation, the kid's just throwing a fit about it.
Well said, yeah.
I really liked how all these, like on the Swizzler, how those little kids had to cooperate. To make that thing work, they have to cooperate. That is a really important skill to teach. They have to do it together with some cooperation.
Thank you.
And the turn taking was a very, very big part of when I was that age. We had how to wait and take turns at a game. Really important skill. I had a huge amount of emphasis on that. You see, but what I'm learning about the verbal thinking, and educators are mostly verbal thinkers, the overgeneralization. They get completely locked into the label. And they can't imagine the kid doing anything. You see, as a visual thinker, I'm saying like sort of, okay, now here's a kid that ought to be programming computers out there, Microsoft, and here's another kid that's definitely not going to do that, but he can deliver the food to the school. See, it's looking at what they can do. The other thing is, I spent 25 years in heavy commercial construction. When you get some beef, it comes out of the big companies, it would have been handled in my center track restrainer system. That's a piece of equipment I worked on developing. And when you're in the construction trades, it's all about outcomes. This kid, smart kid, ends up in the basement playing video games. That's a failed project. That's not a very good outcome. Oh, I want to see the kid get out and get a life. And what I'm saying on the fully verbal end of kids with an autism label, to the basement to play video games, or get out and get a life. Well, we have to start making the transition to work long before they graduate from high school. I want 2 real jobs under that belt before they graduate. And learning just the life skills. There's not enough emphasis on that. The other thing that's a problem is I'll see a teenager that ought to be becoming a computer programmer, just doing things with other kids that are never getting exposed to computer programming. I've seen parents where both of them were engineers in computers, and their 7-year-old was a genius in math, and they didn't think to teach their kid programming, because they got so hung up on the label. So you have your visual thinkers like me, we'll be the industrial designers. Like the play company, they hire industrial designers to design something like the Twizzler. Then the engineers have to make the joint work so that doesn't break. So you have the industrial design side, that's the art side of design. And then you've got the mechanical engineering side of it. So you need to have both. And so other things that visual thinkers are good at, art, graphic design, setting up displays at big conventions. The mathematicians are going to be physicists, chemists, programmers, word thinkers, writers. And some of the word thinking autistics be very good at specialized retail. Selling cars has been very successful. Selling specialized financial products, very successful. Selling specialized business insurance, very successful. These are actual examples. See, that's how my mind works. My mind works in specific examples. Then I can clump them into categories on a spreadsheet.
I was wondering, you were talking about surprises and noises can be really difficult. So how do you do things like the alarm clock in the morning? You probably hate that as much as me. You're expecting that.
Well, I'm expecting that. That's not a surprise.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the difference between that.
Okay. So.
And the problem with the sensory issues, they are so variable. There are some individuals that have visual problems, and certain types of cheap LED lights will flicker. 'Cause when I talk to businesses, they say the number one problem you may have in your office would be the type of lighting. And if this person sees flicker on it, they're not going to be able to work there. You can also get this flicker problem with head injuries. You can get some of these same sensory issues with head injuries. See, one's developmental and one is an injury. I don't have the flicker problem, but I know people that have it and it's really bad. And sometimes you can teach reading. They can learn reading better if you use colored paper, because then the print doesn't jiggle. But sensory problems are real. They're also very, very variable. And then the problem with scratchy clothes. Okay, the problem having to wear masks. I say, give the kids choices of masks, and then you practice wearing it for gradually longer and longer and longer. And then you can get them to wear the masks. But always have some choices. Now, I think a lot of the clothes today are better. I noticed a lot of these little kids were wearing leggings. I would have loved those. A lot more comfortable than the stuff you had in the 50s to wear.
You mentioned earlier about giving those kids that stemming break within like the classroom setting. What would that look like for an educator? Like how long would you give those kids for
It
that moment?
depends
or-
upon the kid. You see, there's some that might need it every 15 minutes, there's some that might need it just twice a day. And Mother always used to say to me, go outside and run the energy out of you. And all these little kids that want to really run around. You see, one of the dumbest things they ever did in education in some states was taking out the recess. Those little kids need to run around and be really active like that. And we've got to control the video game playing. It's having such bad outcomes. And they're designing these games to be deliberately really addictive. Another thing that helped Elon Musk is, if you look up the games that he plays, they're not the real addictive ones. Oh, and by the way, the new Tesla has Elon Musk's favorite games on the computer. And they're not the real addictive games when you look at his age. They're the, but now they're designing the stuff to just be so addictive. And they're not having good outcomes, the video game players. If they were becoming video game designers, I wouldn't be criticizing it. That's not what's happening. Well, I want to limit the video game playing. That's why I did books like Outdoor Scientist and Calling All Minds, to just get kids outside doing things. Okay, let's look at the stars, but you can also look for satellites. You know, that's getting outside and doing things. Do animal behavior. Study the squirrels, what they do. And everything in those books there's nothing expensive in them. I thought it was kind of wonderful. I read in the paper that, you know, they're not going to get all the Halloween costume shipments, so people are going to have to make costumes. I'm like going, good. Do we really need those ones that are now in a $25,000 shipping container box? That's going to add about $6, $8, $10 to the cost of each costume. Maybe we need to be making them. That's what we did. We made all our Halloween costumes. Halloween was my favorite holiday. Yeah, but we made it. We buy pumpkins. There's plenty of those around because they're grown here. We'd carve pumpkins and then we'd make, you know, ghosts out of old sheets and, you know, make things. I was an astronaut one time. I made a cardboard helmet out of a box.
One last question. Anybody have one? Gina. That's Gina Lackey. She came here as a child to Signal Centers, and she's back as an adult, and she works in...
Yes, I did.
Yes, she did.
And my question is, with the farm animals that I'm interested in, how long have you take care of the animal? Do you do it every day, once a week, or how do you do it?
I'm really sorry, but I couldn't understand half of what she said.
How long have you been taking care of the animals? Did you,
Okay.
when you were younger, did you take care of them?
Yes, when I was a teenager, I cleaned 9 horse stalls every day. I fed the horses. I put them in and out of the barn. You see, that's also learning important working skills. See, another problem I still have is hearing auditory detail. When I was a little kid and the grown-ups talked fast, it went into gibberish. And when they talked to me slowly, like my speech teacher would hold up a cup and she'd go, cup-pa, and then she'd go, cup. She'd say it regular and then say it really drawn out so I could hear it. You see, part of the problem is, even though I'm not deaf, I don't hear auditory detail very well. And then in instance, there's background noise. I'm basically functionally deaf. I mean, all the stuff going on with the door, that's just an example of the kind of distraction that you know, if I had to work in an office and I'd have a difficult time. I can't block that out. Now, the sensory issues I have now are just a nuisance. The other thing you got to do when you're working with the speech is give the kid time to respond. They're like a slow computer. They're like a phone on a one-bar service. You got to wait for the website to download. So slow down so they can hear it. Give them time to respond. Then you got your echolalic kids that yak out the movie script. The only problem is they don't know what it means. They can talk, but they don't know what it means. So why don't you pick out some lines in that movie and work it into real conversation? Then they'll start to understand that words mean something. That's an easy thing to do. And then also just learning names of toys, names of foods. And I noticed in the bathroom, you had a little schedule there, and you had the picture and the word right there next to each other. That's really important. Never put the picture on one side of the card and the word on the back. Never do that. You got to see the picture and the word right there together. And a lot of little flashcards like that, starting with just names of things. You know, it helps echolalic kids to become fully verbal. So that's kind of the three ways that language is messed up. Don't hear it clearly, slow to respond, yak it out, but they don't know what it means. There's the three different ways that, unless they're completely deaf, but I passed the hearing test just fine. But I don't hear those hard consonants. That's why my speech teacher would slow down and enunciate them.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. Everybody, thank Dr. Grandin.